Gameplay changes. There were none in this content update, and there is a reason for it. Please, if you have bugs or you see imbalances, please be sure to fill out bug reports. If you have any issues with your account, please fill out a ticket. The July hitting stats, they are out. They are on theshow.com. We spend a lot of time watching how you all play the game offline and online. And the reason why you haven't seen any hitting changes is because the hitting stats looked incredibly good to us. Everything is functioning as we intended. That does not mean things are perfect. We are always striving to make things better. But go check out the hitting stats. We pay very close attention to how everybody plays the game. We watch your streams. We look at the telemetry data. Our telemetry team is so incredible. Thank you so much for your hard work. We'll never stop. We're always looking, but no changes.
Yep, that's right. You just heard it. SDS has doubled down and said again, the hitting engine is working as intended in MLB The Show. I ultimately could not disagree anymore. If you play this game or watch this game for like an hour, you know that this game is not working how it should be. I've yet to see somebody put out like a decent video of what SDS is trying to explain when they're talking about their stats or really anything that would happen in game that would kind of lead to like potential outcomes. So this video is going to try to serve as that purpose, and hopefully I can explain why they think that there's nothing wrong with this game even though there clearly is. Now, before I dive into this video, I do want to make two things abundantly clear. Number one, I know this game will never be perfect. They could fix every freeze, every bug. I'm fully aware that every game we've ever played has always had its issues and that nothing will ever be completely perfect. Later on in this video, I'm going to talk about what could possibly be done to at least help with quality of life stuff, but for right now, we're going to leave it at that. Number two, I do understand that baseball is a very unique sport. Like many others who play this game, I also grew up playing baseball. I've watched professional baseball throughout my entire life, so I am aware of sometimes what we usually call the BS hits and the BS swings. Yes, I understand that that does end up happening. MLB The Show, I know, is a simulation game, and I do understand that in the game of baseball, stuff like that does happen. But the issue with these off PCI hits, really bad timing swings that end up leading to hits, it's not that they happen, it's the frequency in which they occur. If you play this game on a higher competitive level, or if you watch somebody stream for maybe an hour, you'll see a lot of things that should not be happening. Me personally, I've spent over 40 days on this game since it's released. Every single game that I play, there are at least 2 to 3 hits that I look at and I go, that wasn't a hit. There's no way. We'll get a little bit more into detail on that later in this video, but for the moment, let's talk about the stats that SDS is so highly regarding as the reason nothing needs to be changed. So before we talk about any true statistic that they're giving us here, I do want to make sure that it is widely known that I'm only talking about the month of July numbers in online stats only. I feel like that's where most people are having their problems when it comes to online play. So we're only going to talk about online play, and we're going to talk about July only because that's the most recent data available. Now I want to give you a little bit of background of the experience that I have in statistics. I am an epidemiologist in the real world. Every day I work with statistics, and I have to come to a conclusion based on the statistic to determine if these numbers are truly meaningful. I also know the benefits of certain types of data versus the limitations of certain types of data. So for example, for the online hitting stats, this is strictly what SDS has given us. These datas are averages. They don't really tell us anything outside of that. It's basically saying, oh, well, for example, if you're on legend difficulty, you get a perfect swing. Your batting average on that perfect swing would be 857. Those numbers do look good, but I do have a problem with these perfect numbers. My problem with the perfect numbers is that it seems like starting at All-Star, going to Hall of Fame, and then to Legend, you seem to get rewarded less for a perfect swing. My question to SDS is, why is it that as you get higher up in difficulty, you have a less likelihood to get a hit on a perfect user input? As somebody who plays on Legend difficulty, if you're facing a top player and they're throwing one of the better pitchers in the game, if you get a perfect swing, that is something that should be rewarded. Now, I do understand that that doesn't always mean that it has to be a hit or it has to be a home run, but I think at 857 with Legend having a lower batting average on perfect perfects than Rookie, I think that shows that there's some type of problem here that needs to be addressed. The next problem that I see, also looking at Legend, look at the averages for good okay and good weak on Legend compared to all the different difficulties. Why is it on a good okay swing you're batting 173, whereas on All-Star and Hall of Fame, which are lower difficulties, you're batting almost 2% less than you would on Legend? Now, keep in mind, 2% does not really seem like a lot. However, let me show you this. There were over 2 billion swings taken in July of 2022 in MLB The Show. So 2% of 2 billion is about 40 million. Now, obviously, I understand that not every swing is being taken on Legend. However, what I'm trying to say is that higher average for good okay and good weak contact is not based off of a small sample size. There are still probably at least millions of swings in that pool that they're basing these numbers off of. Again, like I said, if you are on Legend difficulty, you understand the struggle of this game. Legend difficulty should be the absolute most rewarded for any user input that you do. If you achieve a good PCI with good timing, you should be rewarded for that swing more often than not. Now, I know a lot of you are listening to that going, oh, well, look at the numbers. That is what they're showing based on their stats. So now we're looking at the good batting average. We have a good PCI. It ends up making good contact with decent timing or good timing. Here's the problem that I have with this category. I have seen very, very bad PCIs have decent exit velocity and be considered a good swing. Just the other day in BR, I had an opponent I was facing had a guy with 70 contact getting off PCI home run that was considered good contact. So my problem with that specifically is that the PCI is supposed to represent where the batter is looking on the swing. It is not supposed to be the bat barrel. I personally think that would be a better idea. However, the PCI is supposed to represent where your batter is looking. So for example, if the ball is barely touching the PCI, or there's a small gap between the PCI and the ball itself, that ball should not be hit hard, because if you think about what the PCI is meant to represent, your player is not looking where the ball actually is in the strike zone. If anything, it should mean that there's some type of foul ball, a tip, or some sort of pop up to first base, something like that, basically representing that there really wasn't any good contact made, but there was contact that led to something that really wasn't very meaningful. Another thing to look at in terms of limitations of this particular data set is that this is just aggregate data. This is them collecting 2 billion swings and just saying, okay, this is what happens on Legend, Hall of Fame, All-Star, Rookie, Veteran, etc. My problem is that this does not paint a picture of what happens game to game. This just means, okay, for the month of July, this is what it looked like. Good job, everybody. Let's wrap up, go home. Again, if you play this game for an hour, or if you watch somebody stream for an hour because you can't stand to play this game, you will see there are issues game to game. Personally speaking, I run into games every now and then where the timing windows just don't stop changing. For whatever reason, it feels like you're just late, the game is delayed, and that because of that ends up leading to you taking bad swings. Another thing to consider is that some games, you're all over the baseball. You get rewarded for your good swings, the PCI placement's there, depending on the stadium as well, and this is also where this is an issue, your stadium influences the exit velocity of the baseball. I seriously think that SDS needs to take a class in physics. It is basic science to understand that elevation does not affect exit velocity. The only thing that elevation should be affecting is how far the ball ultimately goes. That being said, drag is the only thing that should be influenced in terms of the physics of the game on that elevation. So for example, if I hit a baseball with the same exit velocity, with the same launch angle at Coors Field versus Yankee Stadium, I expect that ball to go a lot farther in Coors Stadium, obviously because it's a higher elevation than a stadium like Yankee Stadium. But it seems like for whatever reason, when it comes to low elevation stadiums, unless you're getting a perfect or a near perfect swing, it is almost impossible to get a good exit velocity on a hit or home run. Meanwhile, if you play at a max elevation stadium or just a high elevation stadium in general, a lot of times ground balls, line drives, they tend to be anywhere between 100 to 105, and then if you get a perfect, it tends to be above 105, usually around the 110 mark. I think ultimately the problem is user input. The problem with the statistics that they give us is that they're not telling us what user input is being used. The only thing that they do tell us is exit velocity by hit timing. The problem with this, though, is that this is solely just from timing. The exit velocity depends on your PCI. So for example, for the goods, on All-Star, it's 89 miles an hour. Obviously, the exit velocity on a high PCI, good timing swing, is probably going to be a lot higher than 89, whereas a bad PCI, good timing, will probably fall below that 89 mark. The issue is that both of those still result in hits. Ultimately, we need to be looking game by game, at bat by at bat. SDS needs to report to us not just timing, not just result by timing, but give us numerical values for the PCI, such as the PCI rating, which they already collect, match that up with timing, and give us averages like that. Yes, it may be more work on their part, but if they're trying to prove to us that their hitting engine is working as it should be, those numbers should be reported to us, so now we can understand that that is the case that's happening. In the current circumstances of the stats that they give us, they're really not telling us good information. They're just telling us, oh, well, if you make good contact, half the time you'll get a hit. Or if you make weak contact, you really won't get a hit. It'll be rarely a hit. Especially since there's such a disconnect right now between developers and the community, this is the time more than ever where SDS needs to come out and say, hey, we hear you. Here is the data that we see. Here's the telemetry that we see that is influencing what makes a good hitting engine or not. Ultimately, we are just looking for consistency in the game. Obviously, like I said, I understand that this game will never be completely perfect. I understand that not all good swings result in hits or home runs. However, I do feel like it needs to be consistent from game to game. There are certain games where you're hitting absolutely everything, and then there's certain games where even though you're having good user input, there's nothing but outs from good input. In the beginning clip, they're saying that they're watching our streams. They're saying that they're watching what we do on our streams and how we react in-game, and they take the feedback and they make adjustments based on our feedback. But we've only had a single hitting patch the entire year. If you remember this hitting patch, all they did was slightly shrink the outer PCI to affect foul tips, which really wasn't felt by much. Foul balls are still a problem in this game. Ultimately, I think there's a very large problem in this game just based on the amount of feedback that we feel is getting ignored. If SDS was to come out and they could tell us specifics that they're working at and specifics of what they see and what's working for them, and that is why they're not changing anything, I think that would kind of calm the community a little bit, just in the sense of saying, okay, we understand where they're coming from. Although we might disagree with that, we at least understand now this is what their mindset is when they're making the game. In terms of the statistics, that's basically all I'm going to cover because that's basically all they can give us. Now, moving on, and what I feel SDS needs to do, obviously a hitting patch needs to be done. If a hitting patch is not needed to be done, SDS needs to come out and say, this is why the hitting engine is working, without them just going, oh, well, look at the July stats. Somebody needs to come onto a live stream or release some sort of statement that is saying, these are the exact numbers that we're looking at, and explain to us why those numbers represent a good working hitting engine. Moving forward, I really hope to see a lot more consistency in this game. I love MLB The Show. I've loved these games since I started playing them back when I was in my mid-teens. These games have the potential for so much fun, and when the game is working properly, especially this year, I do have a lot of fun on this game. I will never complain about somebody legitimately beating me because they're getting rewarded for good swings. If someone outplays me, that's a game that just proves that they're better than me. And even if they did outplay me, but I lost by a certain amount and I feel like it should have been less, the game needs to be much more consistent inning to inning, game to game on what's rewarded and what's not. I think the biggest thing moving forward, though, is that both sides need to be able to communicate with each other. The community feels as if their complaints have fallen onto deaf ears. SDS has yet to put out a statement besides it's working as intended to any other hitting patch that has been requested. As Ramon said in the last content update, they are saying that the hitting engine is not perfect, so at least they're acknowledging that. However, they're also saying that they're apparently listening to our feedback, which just does not seem to happen. Going forward, this is not an issue that needs to be taken lightly by SDS. If SDS wants to keep this game in its prime and keep a higher player count, there's no way that they could just sit back and let the game work as it is and just go, nope, this is okay. Again, if the developers just came out and said, hey everyone, we've heard your complaints, we appreciate the feedback, we're at least looking into the problem, I feel as if that so many other content creators and just consumers of the game themselves would be so relieved just at the fact that we're finally realizing, hey, we're being heard. They understand that what's going on right now should not be happening, and they're going to take a look to see what they can do to rectify this problem. That is yet to be seen, unfortunately. It's August of 22 when this video is recorded. Nothing like that has been put out yet, but we can only hope. That's going to be it for the video today, y'all. I really do hope that SDS comes out and talks to the community and gets feedback on what can or can't be changed based on what their hitting engine currently is. I appreciate y'all for watching this video. I hope you learned a little bit about what they do with their statistics and how really they could end up getting a little bit better depending on what type of data they can give us rather than what they already currently do. Please be sure to hit that like button and leave a comment on this video telling me, do you agree with me? Do you think the hitting engine is working as it should be? Be sure to subscribe for more MLB The Show content. I got a lot more coming for y'all. I appreciate y'all for checking out this video, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day.